Alright, let's dive into something that's been blowing my mind lately, the economic anxiety gap between generations. You've probably heard the stereotypes, Gen Z and millennials are the doom and gloom generations, right? But here's the twist, when it comes to consumer confidence, they're actually holding steady, while boomers and Gen Zers are the ones losing sleep over money. What's going on here? Let's break it down. First, let's talk about Gen X. Personally, I think this generation gets overlooked way too often. They're the sandwich generation, stuck between aging parents and dependent kids, and it's hitting them hard. What many people don't realize is that this isn't just a mood, it's structural. They're hitting their 50s, which psychologists call the bottom of the U-shaped happiness curve, and they're feeling the squeeze. Here's a detail I find fascinating: 70% of Gen Zers fear running out of money more than they fear death. Let that sink in. They're looking at a $1.45 million retirement gap, and nearly half aren't confident they'll save enough. This raises a deeper question: if the generation that was supposed to be the slacker generation is this stressed, what does that say about the system they're navigating? Now, let's shift to boomers. On paper, they're the wealthiest generation in history, holding about $85 trillion in assets. But here's where it gets interesting: the top 10% of boomers hold 71% of that wealth. What this really suggests is that the majority of boomers aren't as financially secure as we think. Nearly one-third of Americans 55 or older have no retirement savings, and healthcare costs are skyrocketing. From my perspective, this is a wake-up call. Boomers were sold the American dream, but for many, it's turning into a financial nightmare. What makes this really interesting is how sensitive they are to economic swings. They don't have the time to wait for the market to recover, and that's creating a lot of anxiety. So, why are Gen Z and millennials holding steady? One thing that immediately stands out is their mindset. They're starting their investment journeys earlier, with over half of Gen Z learning about investing before entering the workforce. They've also amassed $3.1 trillion in holdings, which is no small feat, but here's the kicker: they're not just relying on traditional paths. They're entrepreneurial, skeptical of authority, and paving their own way. In my opinion, this self-reliance is a game changer. They're not waiting for a big company to hire them, they're building their own businesses. Gen Z business applications are growing at 66% year over year, which is insane when you think about it. But let's not pretend everything's rosy for younger generations. They're still grappling with insane housing prices and AI anxiety. A detail I find fascinating is that Gen Z's excitement about AI has dropped by 14 percentage points, while their anger toward it has increased by 9 points. Why? Because they're worried about job automation. If you take a step back and think about it, this generation has already weathered a pandemic, a war, and a technological revolution. Their expectations are pessimistic, but that might be why they're not as rattled by bad economic news. They've already priced in a difficult future. Here's the bigger picture: the economic anxiety we're seeing isn't just about numbers, it's about expectations and adaptability. Boomers and Gen Zers were promised stability, so economic volatility hits them harder. Gen Z and millennials, on the other hand, have always known the odds were stacked against them. Personally, I think this is a generational shift in how we approach financial security. Younger generations are redefining success, while older generations are struggling to adjust to a reality that doesn't match their expectations. So, what's the takeaway? In my opinion, this isn't just a story about money, it's about how different generations are navigating uncertainty. Gen Z and millennials might be more pessimistic overall, but they're also more adaptable. Boomers and Gen Zers, meanwhile, are being forced to confront a future they weren't prepared for. It's a sobering reminder that no matter how much you plan, the economic landscape can always surprise you. What do you think? Are younger generations really better equipped to handle financial uncertainty, or is this just a temporary blip? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.